Every drum sound is constructed of three elements: transient, body, and tail. Transient starts the sound, it is short and snappy. Body is a bit longer and makes up the middle of the sound. It connects with the tail and determines how long the sound is. Sometimes there's a fourth element called pre-shift. It appears before the transient and leads to the beginning of the sound. There are three ways of creating drum sounds. You can either connect these three elements on a single track, you can layer different sounds on separate tracks, or you can synthesize. So for the sounds, you can either pick existing ones from your sound library and record or synthesize ones yourself. Second methods are harder, but will allow you to create your own drums 100% from scratch. Let's do the first method for now. Nonetheless, it doesn't really matter. We'll make sure to process the sounds so they are not even close to the original ones. So those are the sounds I've chosen. Way number 1. Single track merging. Let's divide them into 3 parts. Cut the ending and leave only the transient here. Only the mids here, and a tail here. Now connect them together. You can mess with the length of them and stick with what sounds the best. Usually transients are up to 5 milliseconds long, body around 40 milliseconds, and tail shorter or longer, however you prefer. Mess with the pitch of the individual parts to match their tone. This technique is a quick way of making drum sounds. It's more of an interesting way of understanding a wave structure of a sound, but it doesn't offer as much flexibility as the way number 2, multi-track layering. Pick again 3 sounds and put them on separate tracks. This opens up lots of new possibilities, like putting effects on the individual drum sounds. A very common thing people do is they put different EQs for each sound. They cut the lows in one, mids in the second, tops in the third. This works if you do it properly. What I found out though is that it's much easier to divide sounds into transient, body and tail and then EQ them. So let's start with choosing a transient. Now find a nice tail and a body. Make sure to tune them. You can simply change the pitch or you can use a frequency shifter. The second option will not change the length of your sound, like pitching would do. Now EQ them for your taste. Now let's apply post-processing. Best plugins for drum design are a transient shaper, limiter, distortion, EQ, space effects, OTT, and also effect rack plugins like thermal. You don't need any of these plugins I'm about to use, but they're super useful and will save you a lot of time. If you want to change the shape or the tone of a certain layer, feel free to drop any of these effects onto a desired track. Also, if you're trying to make a completely different sound, additional effects may help you move into the right direction. So now once we have a nice balance, a pretty cool sound, group the layers and apply processing onto the whole group. Remember to put a limiter at the end and space effects even further than that. I personally like to start with some transient shaping. Some gentle distortion, then EQ, and limiting. If I want to put it into the space, I put a reverb at the end so it doesn't get affected by any distortion effect. Also, if you're using distortion or soft clipping, make sure to cut the low end it creates afterwards if that's necessary. Now resample the sound and pitch it around if you want to. You can keep processing it or save it into your library to layer it again later. Remember that you don't need to do most of these, the rule is only one. If it sounds good, and that's it. Way number 3, drum synthesis. Same principles apply to synthesizing drums. So let's make a snare. To make a snare, we're gonna use a triangle wave. We're gonna apply a volume automation to the level, so we have a little bit of the transient going on. Now we're gonna add a noise. We're gonna make sure that this noise is more of a brighter one instead of a darker one, by adjusting this pitch here. Now let's apply some automation. So the second LFO is gonna be used to add additional transient. So we're putting this on the pitch and level of the noise. So we're adding this to this. And we get this. Next thing, we're gonna use a really short and snappy LFO to automate the pitches of the oscillator and the noise oscillator. Now we get a really snappy sound. Next thing we need to do is to start adding effects. So one of them is gonna be a distortion. So we're gonna use the stomp box distortion and also apply this automation onto the drive. Make sure to set all the LFOs to envelope mode and turn off the BPM sync. This way we're using only hertz, and no matter the BPM you have in your DAW, you will always be having the same sound. Next thing is the multi-band compressor. Next one is the EQ. We're boosting this region that is really important while making a snare. To make it even more snappy, we can use an additional LFO and modulate the gain of this EQ. Next thing is a bit of width. I'm gonna be using hyper dimension, but only the dimension section. And that's basically the whole snare. Now, let's make a kick. Synthesizing a kick is super easy. What you need is a sine wave for a clean low end. Now, use one of the LFOs on an envelope mode to modulate the coarse pitch of the sine wave. Now adjust it so you have a nice transient. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna adjust this envelope a little bit so we have a kick that goes down in volume. Now let's add some distortion. As you can hear, this distortion is adding a really nice transient. It's also adding the tonal body. We don't want that, we want only transient. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply this LFO onto the drive. This way we're getting mostly this transient. Now add some multi-band compression. And we have a nice kick. You can also experiment with different transients inside the noise oscillator. In Serum there's many different transients, for example kick transients. All you gotta do is to click this and then play it with your sound. You can also import your own sounds into the noise section and use your own transients. Now a hi-hat. Making a hi-hat is actually a really simple thing. All you need is a white noise, volume automation, and a low cut. You can adjust the cutoff of the filter for a different tone. You can adjust the pitch of the white noise for a different sound. And you can adjust the LFO speed for different lengths. And a clap. Making a clap requires making a certain shape of the sound. You will again need white noise. Then apply a volume automation, something like that. You'll get this. Then pitch it down to around here. Then add a low cut. Now add some effects. Add a tube distortion to smooth the sound out and add some nice top end. Also put the LFO onto the drive. Now apply a multi-band compression. Then a phaser filter for a tonal change. And at the end, use the EQ to get rid of that annoying low end and this harsh frequency here. You can take all these sounds, resample them and use for either layering or to process them into something more beefier, or just use them in your tracks. Let's make more sounds. So now we've made mostly snares. Let's make different types of sounds. Let's record some sounds this time. When it comes to making sounds from real-world recordings, being able to use high-quality microphones like the Zoom H5 is a blessing. Let's record. Slap it into Ableton. If you breathe into the microphone, it's just gonna basically create this. So as you can see, this microphone is a stereo microphone. So what you can do is you can put tools like utility, set it to be on the left side, put thermal first on it, transient shaper, somewhere here, boost the low end, but at the end here, sample it, apply a limiter, a thermal once again. Sample that, boom, we got a kick. Percussion sounds are really fun to make because you can make them fully tonal. So for perks, basically what we can do is we gotta make this beefier kind of sound small. Start with adding a thermal and some preset that will make it beefy. Duplicate it once again. So now if we resample this and we pitch it down, get a really nice perk sound. You can keep adding effects, you can keep putting this onto the same effect rack. So if you want this percussion sound to be tonal, what you can do is you can add tools like resonator, formant filters, or you can make resonance in your EQ manually. Remember that complex effect racks and weird plugins are gonna be nothing but helpful here. So slap them onto your sounds, then resample, chop and pitch around, and layer. This way it will not only sound cool, but also very unique. So that's how you make your own drum sounds. Remember to make lots of variations if you're unsure and test them in your songs. Also keep in mind that making an unconventional sounding sounds is totally fine. That's what music is all about. This video was sponsored by me, Oversampled. I am a full-time sound designer and I make sounds professionally at oversampled.us. If you like what you see here, maybe you will like what you see there. There's tons of quality packs that I've created to help you make better music. Also, as you probably saw in this video, we also provide audio plugins at plugins.oversampled.us. If you wanna grab a transient shaper I was using on this video, I'm gonna leave a link in the description. Anyways, thanks for watching, wish you a good one, and see you soon.